was towards the end of last year that I took a little trip to New Zealand to do some landscape photography. And it's only because I happened to have one of these that I was actually able to do it. Of course, the borders are all closed to foreigners due to the pandemic, so I was virtually having a lot of the popular landscape photography locations to myself, other than a few local photographers that happened to be there. I decided to shoot a little bit of video while I was there, all the while not really knowing if I would use it or how I would use it, but I was just documenting my trip. And so here I'm putting together a little bit of a vlog about some of the shoots that I did. And just a disclaimer, I'm not a full-time photographer, and I'm not a professional landscape photographer, so it's not like I necessarily know shit, but maybe there's something in here that's of interest to a lot of people anyways. There was, of course, the mandatory quarantine involved with going to New Zealand, and as soon as I was done with that, well, I made a beeline to my first landscape photography, which was a waterfall just not far out of Auckland. Let's take a look at it. Hi guys. So, me, like all of you, my year's been pretty screwed up because of COVID. Lots of trips been cancelled, all plans kiboshed. Anyways, I've just come out of 2 weeks of managed isolation in a hotel in Hamilton, and that was quite an experience. It's probably a story for a different day, but today is my first day out, and it's coming towards the end of the day, and I'm just going to try and squeeze in a shoot here. Just found this waterfall when I was researching last night, just a little bit out of Auckland, maybe half hour to 40 minutes out of Auckland. It's going to be dark in about 2.5 hours, and it's raining, but we're going to see what happens. I'm going to give it a shot. I got about an hour walk, so hopefully I got enough light. We'll see what I can do. Well, something pretty interesting to show you right off the bat on this hike. Have a look at this. Have you ever known a country to be protecting their forest as diligently as this? This is amazing. And a whole station here just to clean your shoes. All right. Yeah, nice. I sprayed the camera too. You just got a little taste there of what New Zealand is like. Very diligent in protecting everything. That shoe cleaning station back there is, I guess, to prevent some kind of contamination coming in, and there's native trees that are very sensitive to that, so that's why they have stations like that, and sometimes they close these trails just to protect them from people, to allow especially the kauri trees to grow back. Those are trees that were back in the day forested to virtual extinction, and they're enormous trees. Not sure if we'll see any of those on this trip. Not only that, but when you enter the country, they inspect everyone's shoes, and if you've been hiking, if you have hiking boots, they get a cleaning there too. They used to have a trough everyone had to walk through. I don't know if they have that anymore. I didn't see it. Also protecting the country as far as COVID, right now there is literally 0 community transfer cases of COVID in the country, unlike America and Europe, for example. They take it extremely serious. The only people that can enter the country are New Zealand citizens, and you must go into government managed quarantine, which I did. For that, you spend 2 weeks in a hotel. You do look at the same 4 walls for 2 weeks straight, which can get a little much, but they're very good. They look after you, and the meals are great. The hotel is actually barricaded all the way around with a 7 or 8 foot fence and huge signs up warning everyone that it's a quarantine facility and it's under military guard. Not to make it sound like it's a concentration camp or anything like that, because it's not. But the military are not armed or anything like that. It seems like their main role is to make sure the operation runs smoothly. In that 2 weeks, I had plenty of time to research potential landscape photography locations. I actually came up with about 80 different places, and my map looks a bit like this. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to get to that much places while I'm here. I've got maybe a couple of months flexible, but if I get to half those places, that would be an accomplishment. If I get good conditions in half of those half places, that would be a majorly successful trip. Realistically, maybe a quarter of the places. Okay, so you're gonna cringe when you see how I have my camera set up. This is crazy. I'll show you how the tripod is. Just holding my breath just so it doesn't fall off the edge. Well, why am I doing that? So here's what I'm looking at. The two waterfalls and that stupid bush right there in the absolute worst spot. I mean, I'd like to chop it out, but I can't, obviously. So I had to get over here, and there's no way to mount my tripod. I'd like to get down there, actually, but I don't see any way of doing that without risking my life. And on this side, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go around there. So how much trouble would I go to get rid of that one bush? I mean, I'll either accept my composition as it is, or maybe I might move my camera over to here, get another shot with that part of the water not blocked by the bush, and then patch it back into this other composition. Well, I tried to get all the way down around the corner there. It's not happening because this is in flood, too much water. Kind of hoping it'd be quite a bit less water. You can see the other waterfall just over here somewhere, right there. And yeah, I tried to get through there. Right there, I kind of slipped and fell halfway down the bank. Got a muddy ass. So I guess I'm gonna have to come back when it's not so wet, not so flooded. And yeah, it'd be a little easier to get around there. Well, as you could see, I couldn't quite get to the exact spots that I wanted to get to at this location, but I got something from the viewing platform, and I had a few challenges to deal with the bush being in the way. And let's have a look now at how I dealt with that. You can see now what my primary challenge was with this location. In this unedited base layer of my edit, you can see that the bush in the foreground is right in the middle of the pond on the left, and no matter where you go on this viewing platform, it obscures something. In this camera position, I was all the way to the right as far as I could go. In fact, as you saw on the video, I was leaning right over the edge of the railing. So I did that in order to get the waterfall on the right unobscured. And if I went all the way to the other side, this is the composition I had, and now you can see the bush is obscuring the waterfall on the right, but I have the pond unobscured. So my plan was to blend these two images together to make an image that was 100% clean. One of the challenges with this was finding a way to make a foreground that made some kind of sense, and to be able to patch them together with minimal content to be able to join the two areas. In this composition, you can see that the rock in the very foreground is not in the other picture at all, and so it's in fact way over there off camera, and I had to find a way to blend them together. So when I do put them together, I've got this image with a mask on it. Now I get this. I had to find a way to blend together the rock and the grass in the foreground and try to make some sense out of it. I don't think I did the greatest job of it, but if I had not drawn attention to that, I don't know how many of you would have been able to tell that something was done there. Here you can actually see the mask that I used to isolate the area of the second composition that I needed in order to fit it together and make this. This image, as you see it right now, the foreground is put together, but the rest of the image is unedited. I did add a few more layers to this to add a bit of dodging and burning, and some tonal contrast layers, etc., and a vignette. And if I add that, I now have something more like this. Just comparing now the before edit with the bush in the way and kind of flat contrast, and the after, the bush removed, the foreground patched together, and a lot more contrast in the scene. I think it's worth noting that this is probably one of the few locations where you can actually see two waterfalls in the same place when they don't come from the same stream. This waterfall in the foreground on the right is actually a different stream coming from a different direction, and it's about 1.5 times the height of the other waterfall. And I've seen other images where it's not so much in flood like it is now. This waterfall on the right is quite often just a trickle. So the question now is, do I really like this image? I think it has pros and cons. What I do like, I think the composition does seem to work with the pond being on the bottom left third, that being a fairly main subject of the image, and then you've got these two leading lines that come in from the top and from the right. Not sure if you would call it a leading line when it comes from the background, but that's what I'm calling it. Having said all that, this image is definitely not without mistakes and shortcomings. What I don't like with this composition is the fact that the waterfall on the right kind of disappears to nowhere. We'd like to see where it actually ends up, and we can sort of see a little bit of where it splashes at the bottom, but would have been nice to see the whole waterfall. There's no way to do that in this location. You'd be leaning out over a very high cliff. I'm thinking this is about 30 meters high, and if I got beyond the barrier, this would have been life-threatening. I also should have done more bracketing of exposures. I didn't quite have the dynamic range I required to get all the detail in the white water. As you can see in this section, it's kind of lost a bit of detail. I couldn't recover it very well, so an extra underexposed layer would have helped to bring that back. The other thing that I probably, in hindsight, wish I had done is more different length of exposure. I've done this, I think it was around about a 1/4 second exposure for the waterfall. I think that's the best length for that, but not necessarily correct for the pond at the bottom. If we zoom in on this pond, It's just kind of ugly, dirty water, and I wonder if I'd done a longer, like a 30-second exposure, I might have been able to obscure a lot of that. It would have been just a brown blur that might have actually looked nice contrasted against the green. And there's also a bunch of bubbles floating around, and if I'd done maybe some 5-10 second exposures, I might have got some interesting swirling patterns in that. So all of that I missed. In hindsight, I would have liked to have had those options to be able to use that. However, if I had done that, I might have still stuck with this anyways, I don't know, but it would be nice to have had that choice. Now, there is one other thing about this image that kind of bothers me. I don't know if many of you would have noticed without me pointing it out, but just look at this section of this stream here. Tell me that this stream is not running uphill. Yeah, we kind of have a bit of an optical illusion going on here. And I've looked at a lot of other people's images of this exact spot, and a lot of them also have this optical illusion where it looks like that's running uphill. And I guess that's all to do with camera angle and wide angle and all that. We do have one section here that looks a bit like a halo from an edit, which is not actually, if you look at the original image, that's actually still there. So I just left that as is. So all those things said, do I like this image? Will it show up in my portfolio? It's, I think, a little bit borderline. Obviously, there's some things I like about it. I think that I'm going to give myself a 5 out of 10 on this image for all the reasons already stated. This composition was not actually the one I was ideally going for when I came to this location. I actually wanted to get down the bottom and go over on the far left to shoot both waterfalls from ground level. And I just couldn't get to it. As you can see on the video when I was there, it was, in flood, and I if I was a little more hardcore, I wouldn't mind getting dirty and muddy, then okay, maybe I would have got there, but I just wasn't feeling like it at this point. My plan was to come back to this location at the end of my trip and try to do it again when it wasn't so high water, and that never happened. In fact, this trail ended up being closed by the time I got back to Auckland. Well, there's the first one in the bag, and overall I suppose I'm relatively happy with it. Not too bad of a result. This is the part of the video where I'm supposed to say those dreaded L and S words that I'm so sick of hearing in everyone's YouTube videos, and I refuse to say it. And next time I visit Tarawera Falls and get epic conditions, but do I screw it up? Stay tuned.